All right, Brian. So Jordon Davison is a name that will interest, intrigue. English is hard. Anyway, you get what I'm trying to say. Oregon fans for a couple of reasons. Number one, he plays running back. Number two, he is at Mater Dei High School, a place that Oregon fans that follow recruiting should know extremely well at this point. Probably the premier recruiter or the premier producer of high-end recruiting talent in the Southern California area. At least certainly it's among them. Number three, he is considering Ohio State, which now has kind of a twofold recruiting rivalry for some Oregon fans out there because Carlos Locklin is now Ohio State's running backs coach, and not every Oregon fan took that incredibly well. But Oregon is now in another battle. They're trying to flip Ohio State five-star DB commit Naeem Offord, who was on campus recently. Davison is a guy that, you know, I don't know. I don't know. I know that he is committing soon, thinking of committing next week, but Oregon, Ohio State, this feels like another one of those battles that's just going to continue to play out in the Big Ten.
I think that it's really interesting that you brought up the Lachlan thing, and here's the other. He's got a great track record. I think he's the best overall running back coach in the country, recruiting and coaching. Ohio State has two running backs already in the fold, and they're bringing this guy in for a visit. If I remember right, or just took it was one or the other. I'm like, if you're going to try to get three elite running backs in one class, Oregon has more to pitch there. Because I was talking to somebody about this connecting to Ohio State. I'm like, how do you get three guys in one class?
For a running back. For a receiver, you can do it. Oregon's got three receivers right now. They're trying to get that number to 4 or 5.
Right. But running back, that's two is like most guys are like, I'm out at 3. Somebody's leaving. Oregon's probably going to be able to pitch that. And I'm not saying there aren't other schools involved, but Ohio State's a very attractive offer, whether Oregon fans want to hear it or not. And I am not an Ohio State fan, I can assure you. But it just is. So this is an interesting deal. I wonder why he's even interested, but they already have 2 in the fold. Oregon's closer to home, got more playing time. If you lose that one, I'm guessing your comment section will not be good when that happens.
It might not be the prettiest, but sometimes YouTube comments are good, but sometimes they go. Sometimes they can go off the rails. Yeah, Brian understands. So I want to circle back to Dallas Wilson for a moment because you mentioned that other schools are in the mix for the Oregon 5-star wideout. He's the highest ranked player on the 24/7 Sports composite that Oregon has right now in the class of 2025. Who is going to try to pull him away from Oregon?
Miami and Florida State. Those are the main ones. I mean, Florida, LSU, everybody's still going to try, but it'll be Miami or Florida State if it happens. Miami has the NIL dollars. Florida State's development, obviously a very good program.
Good coach. Good coach. I like Mike Norvell.
Florida State's here to stay. Norvell's not going anywhere. That's a very good long-term investment. Talking about the stock market, Florida State football, that's going to be 9 wins and up pretty much every year now. That's attractive, and they need receivers. So him taking that visit late in the year, and I think it's going to be the UF weekend, senior night, the whole 9 yards. If I'm an Oregon fan, I don't like that, but you can't avoid it. He's a Florida
November 29th is when that visit is scheduled for.
Yeah, that's UF. So that place will be bananas. So they'll probably be fighting for a playoff spot. So I'd imagine that's going to be a rather rabid crowd. So he'll be there for that. Those are the only 2 that I would think are really serious contenders. And I know people that are around Miami know that Oregon is really entrenched. This isn't a fly-by-night recruitment. He truly likes it. And, people that like Miami, like the Miami lifestyle, they don't get the whole Oregon thing. I'm talking about fans. I'm not talking about, obviously, some of the coaches that were at the University of Oregon. And they've said it. So this is a great battle. And it's so unique because he's a Tampa kid. Like, I know him. He's from East Tampa kid. That has nothing to do with the West Coast. It's so bizarre that he likes Oregon, but he does. So we'll see. But until that visit with Florida State, I don't think we can count anything.
We just got to give him a few more fresh breaths this weekend of Pacific Northwest non-humid air, and he will fall in love immediately. Weather in Central Oregon right now is absolutely gorgeous, Brian. That's not where I am at this particular moment, but it is where I'm based out of this summer. But we continue on to a namesake, no relation to the Oregon now quarterback legend Bo Nix, but Gavin Nix is a linebacker. That's another spot where Oregon has been on a couple of different recruits, whether that's Noah McHale or Nix. There have been some others that they've been tied to as well. Gavin Nix is a Florida guy. He's got a crystal ball on 24/7 Sports to Miami. Oregon is one of the schools that's in the running for him. Do you see Oregon as having a chance here?
I know flat out that unless something has changed in the last few days, it's Miami or Oregon. Florida State's the outlier. Parents favor him staying closer to home, but Oregon's got a shot. There it is in a nutshell, straight from the people that matter. We'll see if the visit matters.
Yeah, and I think that Oregon has had a heavier emphasis in the state of Florida this year than I remember them having last year.
A few. They really have. You're right.
Yeah, they've already got several, and they're after more. And I'm here for it. I thought with Rashad Samples on staff, you might see a few more pursuits out of the state of Texas. Now, there's still a ways to go. We're going to talk about the recruiting class big picture later in the show. But, the three hotbed states, something I've said for a long time, California, Florida, Texas. If you want to be an elite recruiter the way Oregon is capable of being, you have to have a foothold in two of them. You got to be able to hit those states, when you're not in a Georgia or an Alabama or a Louisiana where they have, just a bevy of blue chip talent out there. I think California, Texas, Florida are the biggest states. Like literally, they're among the biggest states, but you also just have so much talent, and football is so very, very big in those states, Texas and Florida, especially there. A couple more names, one of whom who is out west, Josiah Sharma, 4-star defensive lineman that Oregon has been after. What's the latest that you have heard on his recruitment?
The Alabama visit is the key. I don't think that's going to end well for them. I think he'll end up a Duck. But that staff has a lot of California ties. They landed a couple of big-time players, one included from Mater Dei here recently. I'm curious to see if Alabama can get some of these D linemen and front seven guys that, quite honestly, they haven't got as many of them as usual. They're starting to get the linebackers finally, but they haven't gotten as many massive D linemen. So that's an important recruit for them. But that's a long way from California to Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
Oregon over the last couple of years, last name for you before we talk big picture in the class. They've recruited defensive backs really well. There's a lot of talent stacked on the roster. When you think about a guy like Roderick Pleasant, who was one of the kind of gem recruits of the 2023 cycle, was a special teams player primarily a year ago, might crack the two deep this year, but might be more of a 2025 starting caliber guy. They haven't gotten into their secondary recruits yet. We know who they've been after, guys like Naeem Offord, but another Ohio State commit, or crystal ball, rather, not a commit at this time, is Dorian Brew, who's a 5-star. Speaking of the state of Texas, Oregon is among several other schools that are a finalist for him, reportedly. Do you think the Ducks have a good chance there, or is he going to stay closer to home / be a Buckeye?
Buckeye. That would be my strong guess from what I've heard. Now, he's taking visits, but he's lived in Ohio. He likes it, and there's a lot of pull. And I don't know what it is they're doing with their DBs. They might have one of the greatest DB classes of all time if they get in. So they might sign like 3 out of the top 5 DBs in the country. So and he wouldn't even be one of the top 3, but he's still top 10. It's utterly ridiculous.
That's pretty impressive. Ohio State's got the number 1 recruiting class in the country in the 2025 cycle right now, and their defensive back commits have definitely been a substantial reason why.